Today, we're going to talk about one of history's darkest chapters, the Dachau concentration camp. This isn't just about a place. It's about how an ideology of pure hate was engineered into a systematic machine of terror. It's a chilling look at what humanity is capable of. You know, when you look at it from the air, it almost looks ordinary, like a factory or maybe an army barracks. The rows are so neat, so organized. But that orderliness is a mask for a reality that is almost impossible to imagine. So let's go inside those gates and understand how this system was actually built. So here's the path we're going to take. We'll look at how Dachau became the blueprint, what happened to people when they arrived, the system of terror inside, the horrifying experiments, what the liberators found, and finally, the legacy it leaves behind. Okay, first up, the blueprint for brutality. To really understand the whole network of Nazi camps that spread like a cancer across Europe, you absolutely have to start with Dachau. It was the first. It was the prototype. Think about the timing here. March 1933. Hitler had only been in power for a matter of weeks, and this place was already up and running. It became the oldest and longest-running camp of the Third Reich. It was there from the very beginning to the bitter end. And here's the key takeaway. Dachau wasn't just another prison. It was a school for cruelty. It was their model camp. The SS perfected their methods of torture and control here, and then they copied that blueprint all over Europe. So let's see how that system was applied to the people trapped inside. For every single person who walked through those gates, the first step into the hell of Dachau was the complete and total destruction of who they were. In the beginning, it was built for political opponents, anyone who dared to speak out against the Nazis. But very quickly, the gates opened for anyone the regime decided was an enemy. Jews, Romani people, priests, and eventually people from all across occupied Europe. Just look at these images. It shows you exactly how they did it. People arrived as individuals, bankers, writers, parents, and they were systematically erased. Your name was taken away, replaced with a number. Your clothes were taken, replaced with a striped uniform and a colored patch that labeled your so-called crime. Your whole life, your whole identity was just gone. Now, life inside Dachau wasn't just random chaos. Oh, no. It was governed by a meticulous, carefully designed system of terror. Its only purpose was to break the body, and even more so, to break the human spirit. And here's one of the most twisted parts of that system. The SS guards, they stayed on the outside mostly. Inside, they created a brutal internal hierarchy. They would pick certain prisoners, often violent criminals they called capos, to terrorize their fellow inmates. It was a sick way of forcing the oppressed to take part in their own oppression. And this whole brutal system was made infinitely worse by the overcrowding. Just try to wrap your head around this. A camp designed for 8,000 people was routinely crammed with 30,000. This wasn't just poor planning, the overcrowding itself was a weapon. It guaranteed that disease and starvation would tear through the barracks. And all over the camp, the Nazis would post these arrogant slogans, preaching about order and discipline. And you compare that with the reality on the ground, a world of random beatings, torture, and death. The contrast is just grotesque. And if it's possible, the story gets even darker. Because Dachau wasn't just a place to imprison people. It was also a laboratory where living human beings were turned into subjects for some of the most horrific medical experiments ever conceived. And these weren't random acts of sadism. They were calculated, recorded experiments. Nazi doctors would lock men in low-pressure chambers to see how their lungs would rupture at high altitudes. They'd submerge people in ice water for hours to study hypothermia, taking careful notes as they died. They injected hundreds with malaria and typhus, all in the name of science. So now we get to April 1945. American forces are pushing toward Munich, and they stumble upon this place. What they found would defy words and would haunt those soldiers for the rest of their lives. This quote, this is from the official U.S. Army report. These were combat-hardened soldiers. They'd seen the worst of war across all of Europe, and even they were left completely speechless by what they saw at Dachau. A stunning shock. The very first thing they came across was what became known as the death train. Almost 40 train cars just sitting there. And inside, they were packed with the bodies of thousands of prisoners who had died from starvation and exposure just days before. And that same report captures this this raw disbelief. You can just feel the confusion and the horror in this question. It's what every single soldier was thinking. How is it possible that human beings could do this to other people? The last few months were an absolute catastrophe. As other camps were being evacuated, the Nazis forced prisoners on death marches to Dachau, and the camp's infrastructure just completely collapsed. You can see the result right here. In just those last few months, over 13,000 people died, mostly from a typhus epidemic that was raging through the camp, and, of course, from starvation. So, when we try to understand the legacy that Dachau leaves behind, you have to look at the words that were forged into the main gate, a symbol of the camp's ultimate cruel deception. Arbeit, Macht, Frei. It means work sets you free. Could there be a more cynical, more evil lie? This was the first thing prisoners saw, a false promise of freedom at the entrance to a place where hard labor was just another method of execution. In the end, Dachau is a permanent, chilling reminder of what happens when a government sponsors dehumanization on a massive scale. It was the training ground where the terror began, and it was a place of unimaginable death right up until the very end. And that history, it's not just a lesson about the past. It leaves us with a profound and really urgent question for right now, for our future. How do we make sure that remembering this kind of profound darkness actually helps us to protect the light of humanity today?